On May 23, 2019, we, a group of students, went on a trip to Lake Winnipeg. We were invited to come aboard a boat called the Namao. On the Namao, we learned a bunch of new stuff. We learned about water clarity, phytoplankton, zooplankton, sediment, dissolved oxygen, plastic pollution, the food web, and a bunch more cool stuff.
So, we learned about benthos and sediment. So, the lesson purpose of this was to differentiate the benthos community, which actually affected the amount of nutrients in the water, and we also found out the numbers of organisms and if they're sensitive to low oxygen. So we researched these things with an Ekman dredge, or the clamp in this video, and we gathered sediment from the bottom of the lake. We sifted/strained through the mud to find organisms, signs of decomposing plants, and more. We ended up finding and learning about mayflies, a lunged snail, freshwater clamps, and decomposing plants at the bottom of the lake.
I think Joyce found a new pet. Okay, so I'll get a dish and then they swim.
How many legs does it have?
I have a picture of that.
What's it called? A fish fly?
6.
Yeah.
I think it has 6. These are pro legs. You gotta get your hand there and stir it up.
Yeah, this is fun.
Pretty cold, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, this is kind of gross. Water clarity. To measure the clarity of the water, we used a tool called a Secchi disc. A Secchi disc helps calculate the photic zone. The photic zone is important because it can show us where algae is growing. Phytoplankton and zooplankton. Phytoplankton are floating plants and zooplankton are floating animals. They are very important in the aquatic food web.
We just watch him. He's sort of pushing his food through his body.
Oh wow.
Imagine he's not very happy right now.
We won't be able to probably get it through much because like it's being squished.
And you can see these little, I'm not sure what they're
Would you
called.
dump the sample back into the ocean?
Well, the ocean's pretty far away, so juvenile copepods. If you want to write it down, but you don't have to because that's pretty technical.
Did we see?
Unless you're an expert and then it's not technical at all.
Wait, how do you know if it's a male or a female?
The female has the longest, and then I guess those 2 males.
So you can see this one. It's not squished at least, and you can see his hairy little antenna
That's the
and
female.
his eye.
No, because those are all different types of like the same thing.
That one's for sure female. Because it has the longest.
Dissolved oxygen. We used an oxygen probe to measure the concentration of dissolved oxygen in the lake. We measured from the surface to near the bottom of the lake to see the oxygen status and see what consequences may occur. For example, the effect of organisms in the water. We learned that the amount of oxygen in a lake can have a great impact. Too little oxygen can be lethal. For example, on the oxygen probe, that would be a 1 to 3 on the scale. A 3 to 7 can be stressful, and a 6 to 14 plus is required for optimal growth. Different amounts of oxygen affects aquatic life.
Next, we learned about plastic pollution. So in this, we learned about how Plastic pollution affects animals in our ocean, and that was because animals are consuming plastic and that ruins the food chain. We identified types of plastics and we learned about micro, macro, and nanoplastics. We also learned about how it affects the lake. First, we talked about sources of plastics and their possible pathways to water. We came to the conclusion that most plastic is sourced from restaurants or stores, and the most common pathway to water was that it was littered or blown away by the wind. We learned that lots of organisms accidentally consume plastic, which ends up lowering the stable population of food chain groups before. Lastly, we learned about ways we can solve the problem, like reusable options.